I sure hope we're set to put a bow on this thing sooner rather than later. I know. But for right now, it's still the top story in Kansas City, and that is yesterday, the Missouri House of Representatives passing the bill to allow the Chiefs and the Royals to basically stay in Missouri by funding up to 50% of their stadium improvement or new stadium costs. And this is an extension of what got through the Senate last week. Now it goes to Governor Kehoe's desk. The mayor of Kansas City, Quinton, is here joining us on KCMO 95.7 FM. We're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So from the city perspective, Mr. Mayor, once Governor Kehoe signs this piece of legislation, what is next for you in terms of enticing these teams to stay?
Our view is once we are, when we have the signed legislation, our conversations, particularly with the Kansas City Royals, continue pretty aggressively. We have heard on your show and others that the state of Kansas intends to at least resolve the discussion as to their interest by June 30th. I think that is actually a good deadline for everyone. This is something that we have talked about for years. Kansas City has put forward a very good offer when you match the Missouri incentive, which was not on the table before. I think you have a compelling, if not the best possible offer to retain both teams in Kansas City, Missouri, and in Jackson County for the Chiefs. So we do plan to have that discussion here coming up soon with them. We've already reached out. We've been having conversations for a while. And I think, the main thing is this. We understand the teams are looking at kind of what the different offers are, who, has leverage and all of that. We think Kansas City is the most attractive, but I think this is the point where everybody puts their best foot forward and the teams make a decision and the rest of our region gets to move on and talk about the many other important issues going on.
Yeah. How high is your confidence level on that, on the teams now doing their part in the next 18 days on a scale of 1 to 10?
Look, it's probably an 8, at least for, and I know you talk to a lot of people. I have the fortune of talking to a lot of people, too. Granted, I know the Chiefs are evaluating all their options. I think they wanted to stay at Arrowhead. I think that's part of why you see the fact that Star bonds were passed, a year ago, and we're still in this same position. It has allowed us to have more conversation with the state of Missouri, doing more work in connection with what we need to figure out on the money side, and I think that means that we will be able to get things moving there. In terms of the Royals, I think they have pretty clear and distinct choices coming up. Do they want to move from one suburban-esque ballpark to another suburban ballpark, mind you, with more stuff close to it, or do they want to go downtown baseball like they've been talking about for some time? I think that is a pretty clear choice. We're going to make sure that the money, at least, is not something that distinguishes the decisions they make. I think they have not only a very fair offer from the state of Missouri and Kansas City, but importantly this, right? I think you have a firmer offer. Star bonds are a speculative tool. I've talked about it on here before. Can you sell the bonds? Does it all work out? That's very different than the Missouri proposal, which shares that there's going to be money coming in. You have 50% of the deal paid for by the state of Missouri through redirections from the stadium itself. Kansas City is working on that. Kansas City can fund infrastructure and does good big projects. It should all work out.
I have said for many months that if the teams, one or both, had left Kansas City, Missouri, this would have been part of your legacy, and that would have largely been unfair because there would have been a lot of reasons for why this would have gone down the way it did. So now that I think we're both in agreement that they're more likely to stay than not, will you be brandishing a Mike Kehoe 28 sign in your front yard here pretty soon?
I mean, look, let me be quite honest with you. And Mike Kehoe and I have disagreements, but in terms of development and in terms of what's going on in Missouri's major cities, he's been a hell of a governor. I'm not going to lie. If you look at the $100 million going to the city of St. Louis, I know some don't like that compromise, but St. Louis was about to get zero from the state of Missouri if Governor Kehoe had not stepped up. That's for tornado and other disaster relief. If you look at the stadium issue, we have had it bouncing around for years. I came on your show saying Missouri needs to do a match. Mike Kehoe got it done. He got it through a conservative state legislature, which had any number of headwinds against it. I mean, look, those are the sorts of things that make a difference. Would I love for him to share my view on Medicaid? Yes. Would I love for him to share my view on public safety and local control of the Kansas City Police? Sure. But, notwithstanding some of those things, I can give people credit where it's due. And this was a huge win, Mike Kehoe, in terms of showing his authority in the Missouri legislature. And if both teams stay, that is a huge thing that he should get credit for.
Mayor Lucas is joining us on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So this has been a big topic this week in Kansas City. That is the countdown to the World Cup, 1 year to go until we welcome the World Cup here to Kansas City. What is right now, in your estimation, the biggest challenge facing this town hosting an event of this size next year?
Biggest challenge right now, other than the fact that we are fixing up Arrowhead Stadium, which is why it makes more sense for the Chiefs to stay. I think they will. But, the biggest challenge right now is transportation. How are we going to get all those people around, many of whom, don't have personal vehicles or used to trains or used to other ways to get around? I mean, if we get Germany coming and bringing thousands of guests, first of all, that's going to be great because we're going to get a lot of money and all of that. But I think the thing that we need to make sure is that we can have a good environment for them, that we're able to get people to all the spaces they need to, including, trekking everybody out to Arrowhead Stadium. That's part of why downtown baseball, at least in a different sport, makes a lot of sense because you're not building up all the infrastructure to transport everybody around.
Okay, so is there going to be something then on that front when it comes to busing and services of that kind that the city is going to be announcing in the weeks or months to come? Do you still have to figure that part out?
I think it's still being worked on. KC 2026, the group that is organizing the World Cup at the direction of Kansas City, or we signed a contract to allow them to put it all together. No, I think there is work to do in terms of making sure we have enough buses, seeing where everybody stays. But, we spend a lot of time saying how this is going to fill up every hotel room from Sedalia to Topeka. The challenge, and I say this with the greatest love of my friends in Pettis County or Shawnee County, is that, how do you make sure that you can get efficiently back to the stadium and not have to pay a $300 Uber charge for it? So I think that is something that you will hear more about as we get closer to the Cup. I wish that we were able to develop more prior to the World Cup. It doesn't look like that's going to get done. But, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and we'll make sure that we still have a good welcome to our future guests.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I also need to ask you, in the wake of what has been a busy news week again, one of your posts here, do you truly believe that Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is one of our country's strongest local leaders?
I think the world of Karen Bass. She is a good mayor. She has had a world of different challenges early in her mayoralty, and more to the point, right? Look, we either like local control or we don't. I have done ride-alongs with the Los Angeles Police Department. That is a good department that takes a lot of flack. And in any other situation, I think everybody would be defending LAPD or the LA County Sheriff's Office. And I find it interesting now that we're suggesting that they can't manage what is not probably the biggest protest they've even had in the last decade. So, I stand by them. I stand by Mayor Bass. I know her. She is measured. She is calm. And she's not somebody who's trying to escalate a situation. So I'm glad to see that it at least appears that everything is resolving itself in Los Angeles. I don't think the president's rhetoric, the Secretary of Defense, and others were helpful in getting us to that point.
I think that dog in the background disagrees with you, by the way. That's just that's my interpretation of what I heard behind you, but we'll let it go. There are multiple protests this weekend. They're calling it the No Kings protest against the President of the United States. Will you be participating in any of these protests this weekend?
I am not taking part in any protests. That being said, I respect the First Amendment, respect everyone's right to come and share their voice. I expect everybody to be peaceful. I expect them to follow our rules, and I expect everybody, even if there are counter-protesters, to be peaceful. Kansas City is a place that knows how to exercise its rights, but it's also a place that knows how to respect others. I'm expecting that this weekend. In the event that there's anything that does go awry, I believe the Kansas City Police Department is more than ready to handle whatever may happen. And I'm not casting aspersions on those who may be protesting or those who are counter-protesting. We just make sure that KCPD is always ready, as mayors around all of America's major cities, like Karen Bass, are doing.
What's the policy in Kansas City on protesters when they march up Main Street or whatever and they're technically shutting down the roads? I mean, everyone's got a First Amendment right to protest whatever they want. But when you're shutting down streets, and KCPD obviously was there and knew what was going on, is that a gray area of being like, hey, they technically can't shut down the road, but no one's being harmed here? What's the policy from your perspective on that?
And here's the dog back to answer in the background. What I would say is, look, you're not supposed to shut down the road. That can subject you to arrest. That is something that we don't like people doing. And if and it just is common sense, right? If everybody wanted to shut down the road for whatever the heck they wanted to say, then, right, we have a lot more threats to people who are purporting to exercise their First Amendment rights. That does break the rules. That being said, and I respect this about KCPD, particularly right now, they know, and every law enforcement officer and agency in our country realizes this, which is sometimes you take enforcement action and other times you say, look, the challenge is going to dissipate quickly. They're walking along, they're moving along, and so we're gonna allow them to do so. Look, in my dream world, everybody gets a parade permit. Everybody lets KCPD know all the plans, and everybody is peaceful and respects each other. It's not a perfect world necessarily, but regardless of that, we will make sure that everybody's able to have their rights heard as safely as possible. We hope they do follow the rules in connection with it, though.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you as always, and have a great weekend.
Hey, we'll try to give you breaking news when we have the baseball deal done. We'll just call in on you and all that stuff. So
that sounds great.
We can wrap it all up.
I'm sure you've got the hotline memorized after all these years.
We got you.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thank you. That is Quinton Lucas on KCMO Talk Radio.